Page 1. Section 9, Hazardous Materials. This section covers the intent of the regulations, bulk tank loading, unloading, and marking, driver responsibilities, driving and parking rules, communications rules, emergencies, loading and unloading. Hazardous materials are products that pose a risk to health, safety, and property during transportation. The term often is shortened to hazmat, which you may see on road signs, or to HM in government regulations. Hazardous materials include explosives, various types of gas, solids, flammable and combustible liquid, and other materials. Because of the risks involved and the potential consequences these risks impose, all levels of government regulate the handling of hazardous materials. The Hazardous Materials Regulations, HMR, is found in Parts 100 through 185 of Title 4.9 of the Code of Federal Regulations. The common reference for these regulations is 4.9 CFR 100 through 185. The hazardous materials table in these regulations contains a list of these items. However, this list is not all-inclusive. Whether or not a material is considered hazardous is based on its characteristics and the shipper's decision on whether or not the material meets a definition of a hazardous material in the regulations. The regulations require vehicles transporting certain types or quantities of hazardous materials to display diamond-shaped, square-on-point warning signs called placards. This section is designed to assist you in understanding your role and responsibilities in hauling hazardous materials. Due to the constantly changing nature of government regulations, it is impossible to guarantee absolute accuracy of the materials in this section. An up-to-date copy of the complete regulations is essential for you to have. Included in these regulations is a complete glossary of terms. You must have a commercial driver license, CDL, with a hazardous materials endorsement before you drive any size vehicle that is used in the transportation of any material that requires hazardous material placarding, or any quantity of a material listed as a select agent or toxin in 4.2 CFR 93. You must pass a written test about the regulations and requirements to get this endorsement. Everything you need to know to pass the written test is in this section. However, this is only a beginning. Most drivers need to know much more on the job. You can learn more by reading and understanding the federal and state rules applicable to hazardous materials, as well as attending hazardous materials training courses. Your employer, colleges and universities, and various associations usually offer these courses. You can get copies of the federal regulations, 4.9 CFR, through your local government printing office bookstore and various industry publishers. Union or company offices often have copies of the rules for driver use. Find out where you can get your own copy to use on the job. The regulations require training and testing for all drivers involved in transporting hazardous materials. Your employer, or a designated representative, is required to provide this training and testing. Hazardous materials employers are required to keep a record of that training on each employee as long as that employee is working with hazardous materials and for 90 days thereafter. The regulations require that hazardous materials employees be trained and tested at least once every 3 years. All drivers must be trained in the security risks of hazardous materials transportation. This training must include how to recognize and respond to possible security threats. The regulations also require that drivers have special training before driving a vehicle transporting certain flammable gas materials or highway route-controlled quantities of radioactive materials. In addition, drivers transporting cargo tanks and portable tanks must receive specialized training. Each driver's employer or his or her designated representative must provide such training. Some locations require permits to transport certain explosives or bulk hazardous wastes. States and counties also may require drivers to follow special hazardous materials routes. The federal government may require permits or exemptions for special hazardous materials cargoes such as rocket fuel. Find out about permits, exemptions, and special routes for the places you drive. 9.1. The intent of the regulations. 9.1.1. Contain the material. Transporting hazardous materials can be risky. The regulations are intended to protect you, those around you, and the environment. They tell shippers how to package the materials safely and drivers how to load, transport, and unload the material. These are called containment rules. Page 2. 9.1.2. Communicate the risk. To communicate the risk, shippers must warn drivers and others about the material's hazards. The regulations require shippers to put hazmat warning labels on packages, provide proper shipping papers, emergency response information, and placards. These steps communicate the hazard to the shipper, the carrier, and the driver. 9.1.3. Assure safe drivers and equipment. In order to get a hazardous materials endorsement on a CDL, you must pass a written test about transporting hazardous materials. To pass the test, you must know how to identify what are hazardous materials, safely load shipments, properly placard your vehicle in accordance with the rules, safely transport shipments. Learn the rules and follow them. Following the rules reduces the risk of injury from hazardous materials. Taking shortcuts by breaking rules is unsafe. Non-compliance with regulations can result in fines and jail. Inspect your vehicle before and during each trip. Law enforcement officers may stop and inspect your vehicle. When stopped, they may check your shipping papers, vehicle placards, and the hazardous materials endorsement on your driver license and your knowledge of hazardous materials. 9.2. Hazardous Materials Transportation. Who does what? 9.2.1. The shipper sends products from one place to another by truck, rail, vessel, or airplane. Uses the hazardous materials regulations to determine the product's proper shipping name, hazard class, identification number, packing group, correct packaging, correct label and markings, correct placards. Must package, mark, and label the materials, prepare shipping papers, provide emergency response information, and supply placards. Certify on the shipping paper that the shipment has been prepared according to the rules, unless you are pulling cargo tanks supplied by you or your employer. 9.2.2. The carrier takes the shipment from the shipper to its destination. Prior to transportation, checks that the shipper correctly described, marked, labeled, and otherwise prepared the shipment for transportation. Refuses improper shipments. Reports accidents and incidents involving hazardous materials to the proper government agency. 9.2.3. The driver makes sure the shipper has identified, marked, and labeled the hazardous materials properly. Refuses leaking packages and shipments. Placards his vehicle when loading if required. Safely transports the shipment without delay. Follows all special rules about transporting hazardous materials. Keeps hazardous materials shipping papers and emergency response information in the proper place. 9.3. Communication rules. 9.3.1. Definitions. Some words and phrases have special meanings when talking about hazardous materials. Some of these may differ from meanings you are used to. The words and phrases in this section may be on your test. The meanings of other important words are in the glossary at the end of Section 9. A materials hazard class reflects the risks associated with it. There are 9 different hazard classes. The types of materials included in these 9 classes are in Figure 9.1. Figure 9.1 appears on page 3. Continuing with the text. A shipping paper describes the hazardous materials being transported. Shipping orders, bills of lading, and manifests are all shipping papers. Figure 9.6 shows an example shipping paper. Figure 9.6 appears on page 6. Continuing with the text. Page 3. Table on page 3, Figure 9.1, Hazardous Materials Class. Class 1. Division 1.1. Name of class or division, mass explosion. Examples, dynamite. Class 1. Division 1.2. Name of class or division, projection hazard. Examples, flares. Class 1. Division 1.3. Name of class or division, fire hazard. Examples, display fireworks. Class 1. Division 1.4. Name of class or division, very insensitive. Examples, ammunition. Class 1. Division 1.5. Name of class or division, extremely insensitive. Examples, blasting agents, explosive devices. Class 2. Division 2.1. Name of class or division, flammable gases. Examples, propane. Class 2. Division 2.2. Name of class or division, non-flammable gases. Examples, helium. Class 2. Division 2.3. Name of class or division, poisonous or toxic gases. Examples, fluorine compresses. Class 3. Division, blank. Name of class or division, flammable liquids. Examples, gasoline. Class 4. Division 4.1. Name of class or division, flammable solids. Examples, ammonium picrate. Class 4. Division 4.2. Name of class or division, spontaneously combustible. Examples, wetted. Class 4. Division 4.3. Name of class or division, spontaneously dangerous when wet. Examples, white phosphorus, sodium. Class 5. Division 5.1. Name of class or division, oxidizers. Examples, ammonium nitrate. Class 5. Division 5.2. Name of class or division, organic peroxides. Examples, methyl ethyl ketone peroxide. Class 6. Division 6.1. Name of class or division, poison, toxic material. Examples, potassium cyanide. Class 6. Division 6.2. Name of class or division, infection substances. Examples, anthrax virus. Class 7. Division, blank. Name of class or division, radioactive. Examples, uranium. Class 8. Division, blank. Name of class or division, corrosives. Examples, battery fluid. Class 9. Division, blank. Name of class or division, miscellaneous hazardous materials. Examples, polychlorinated biphenyls, PCB. Class, none. Division, blank. Name of class or division, ORM-D, other regulated material, domestic. Examples, food flavorings, medicines. Class, none. Division, blank. Name of class or division, combustible liquids. Examples, fuel oil. Continuing with the text. After a crash or hazardous material spill or leak, you may be injured and unable to communicate the hazards of the materials you are transporting. Firefighters and police can prevent or reduce the amount of damage or injury at the scene if they know what hazardous materials are being carried. Your life and the lives of others may depend on quickly locating the hazardous material shipping papers. For that reason, the rules require shippers to describe hazardous materials correctly and include an emergency response telephone number on shipping papers. Carriers and drivers to quickly identify hazardous material shipping papers or keep them on top of other shipping papers and keep the required emergency response information with the shipping papers. Drivers to keep hazardous material shipping papers in a pouch on the driver's door or in clear view within immediate reach while the seat belt is fastened while driving or on the driver's seat when out of the vehicle. 9.3.2 Package Labels. Shippers put diamond-shaped hazard warning labels on most hazardous materials packages. These labels inform others of the hazard. If the diamond label won't fit on the package, shippers may put the label on a tag securely attached to the package. For example, compressed gas cylinders that will not hold a label will have tags or decals. Labels look like the example in Figure 9.2. Illustration on page 3, Figure 9.2. Examples of hazmat labels. Hazmat labels reading clockwise from the top: inhalation hazard, Class 6, poison, Class 6, organic peroxide, Class 5.2, oxidizer, Class 5.1, infectious substance, Class 6, PG Roman numeral 3, Class 6. Continuing with the text. 9.3.3 Lists of regulated products. Placards. Placards are used to warn others of hazardous materials. Placards are signs put on the outside of a vehicle and on bulk packages which identify the hazard class of the cargo. A placarded vehicle must have at least 4 identical placards. They are put on the front, rear, and both sides of the vehicle. Figure 9.3 appears on page 4, continuing with the text. Placards must be readable from all 4 directions. They are at least 10 3/4 inches square, square on point, in a diamond shape. Cargo tanks and other bulk packaging display the identification number of their contents on placards or orange panels or white square-on-point displays that are the same size as placards. Identification numbers are a 4-digit code used by first responders to identify hazardous materials. An identification number may be used to identify more than one chemical. The letters NA or UN will precede the identification number. The United States Department of Transportation's Emergency Response Guidebook, ERG, lists the chemicals and the identification numbers assigned to them. Page 4. Illustration on page 4, Figure 9.3. Examples of hazmat placards. Placards reading clockwise from the top: 1.5 blasting agents, Class 1, flammable, Class 3, poison, Class 6, corrosive, Class 8, dangerous, no class shown, radioactive, Class 7, flammable solid, no class shown, oxygen, Class 2, oxidizer, Class 5.1. Continuing with the text. There are 3 main lists used by shippers, carriers, and drivers when trying to identify hazardous materials. Before transporting a material, look for its name on 3 lists. Some materials are on all lists, others on only one. Always check the following lists. Section 172.101, the Hazardous Materials Table. Appendix A to Section 172.101, the list of hazardous substances and reportable quantities. Appendix B to Section 172.101, the list of marine pollutants. The Hazardous Materials table. Figure 9.4 shows part of the Hazardous Materials table. Figure 9.4 appears on page 5, continuing with the text. Column 1 tells which shipping mode or modes the entry affects and other information concerning the shipping description. The next 5 columns show each material's shipping name, hazard class or division, identification number, packaging group, and required labels. 6 different symbols may appear in column 1 of the table. Plus sign shows the proper shipping name, hazard class, and packing group to use, even if the material doesn't meet the hazard class definition. Capital letter A means the hazardous material described in column 2 is subject to the HMR only when offered or intended for transport by air, unless it is a hazardous substance or hazardous waste. Capital letter W means the hazardous material described in column 2 is subject to the HMR only when offered or intended for transportation by water, unless it is a hazardous substance, hazardous waste, or marine pollutant. Capital letter D means the proper shipping name is appropriate for describing materials for domestic transportation, but may not be proper for international transportation. Capital letter I identifies a proper shipping name that is used to describe materials in international transportation. A different shipping name may be used when only domestic transportation is involved. Capital letter G means this hazardous material described in column 2 is a generic shipping name. A generic shipping name must be accompanied by a technical name on the shipping paper. A technical name is a specific chemical that makes the product hazardous. Column 2 lists the proper shipping names and descriptions of regulated materials. Entries are in alphabetical order, so you can more quickly find the right entry. The table shows proper shipping names in regular type. The shipping paper must show proper shipping names. Names shown in italics are not proper shipping names. Column 3 shows a material's hazard class or division, or the entry forbidden. Never transport a forbidden material. Placard hazardous material shipments based on the quantity and hazard class. You can decide which placards to use if you know these 3 things: material's hazard class, amount being shipped, amount of all hazardous materials of all classes on your vehicle. Column 4 lists the identification number for each proper shipping name. Identification numbers are preceded by the letters UN or NA. The letters NA are associated with proper shipping names that are only used within the United States and to and from Canada. The identification number must appear on the shipping paper as part of the shipping description and also appear on the package. It also must appear on cargo tanks and other bulk packaging. Police and firefighters use this number to quickly identify the hazardous materials. Column 5 shows the packing group, in Roman numeral, assigned to a material. Column 6 shows the hazard warning label or labels shippers must put on packages of hazardous materials. Some products require use of more than one label due to a dual hazard being present. Column 7 lists the additional, special provisions that apply to this material. When there is an entry in this column, you must refer to the federal regulations for specific information. The numbers 1-6 in this column mean the hazardous material is a poison inhalation hazard, PIH. Page 5. PIH materials have special requirements for shipping papers, marking, and placards. Column 8 is a 3-part column showing the section numbers covering the packaging requirements for each hazardous material. Note, columns 9 and 10 do not apply to transportation by highway. Table on page 5, figure 9.4. 49 CFR 172.101 Hazardous Materials Table. Symbols, column 1, A. Hazardous Materials Description and Proper Shipping Names, Column 2, Acetaldehyde ammonia. Hazard Class or Division, Column 3, 9. Identification Numbers, Column 4, UN 1841. PG, Column 5, Roman numeral 3. Label Codes, Column 6, 9. Special Provisions, 172.102, Column 7, IB 8, IP 6. Packaging, Section 173. Exceptions, Column 8A, 155. Non-bulk, Column 8B, 204. Bulk, Column 8C, 240. Table appearing on page 5, Figure 9.5, Appendix A to 49 CFR 172, List of hazardous substances and reportable quantities. Hazardous substances, phenylmercaptan, reportable quantity, RQ, pounds, 100, kilograms, 45.4. Hazardous substances, phenylmercury acetate, reportable quantity, RQ, pounds, 100, kilograms, 45.4. Hazardous substances, N-phenylthiourea, reportable quantity, RQ, pounds, 100, kilograms, 45.4. Hazardous substances, phorate, reportable quantity, RQ, pounds, 10, kilograms, 4.54. Hazardous substances, phosgene, reportable quantity, RQ, pounds, 10, kilograms, 4.54. Hazardous substances, phosphoric acid, reportable quantity, RQ, pounds, 5,000, kilograms, 2,270. Hazardous substances, phosphoric acid diethyl 4-nitrophenyl ester, reportable quantity, RQ, pounds, 100, kilograms, 45.4. Hazardous substances, phosphoric acid, lead salt, reportable quantity, RQ, pounds, 10, kilograms, 4.54. Continuing with the text. Appendix A to 49 CFR 172.101, the list of hazardous substances and reportable quantities. The DOT and the EPA want to know about spills of hazardous substances. They are named in the list of hazardous substances and reportable quantities. See Figure 9.5. Column 3 of the list shows each product's reportable quantity, RQ. When these materials are being transported in a reportable quantity or greater in one package, the shipper displays the letters RQ on the shipping paper and package. The letters RQ may appear before or after the basic description. You or your employer must report any spill of these materials which occurs in a reportable quantity. If the words inhalation hazard appear on the shipping paper or package, the rules require display of the poison inhalation hazard or poison gas placards as appropriate. These placards must be used in addition to other placards, which may be required by the product's hazard class. Always display the hazard class placard and the poison inhalation hazard placard, even for small amounts. Appendix B to 49 CFR 172.101, the list of marine pollutants. Appendix B is a listing of chemicals that are toxic to marine life. For highway transportation, this list is only used for chemicals in a container with a capacity of 119 gallons or more, without a placard or label as specified by the HMR. Any bulk packages of a marine pollutant must display the marine pollutant marking, white triangle with a fish and an X through the fish. This marking, it is not a placard, must be displayed on the outside of the vehicle. In addition, a notation must be made on the shipping papers near the description of the material, marine pollutant. 9.3.4, the shipping paper. The shipping paper shown in Figure 9.6 describes a shipment. Figure 9.6 appears on page 6. Continuing with the text. A shipping paper for hazardous materials must include page numbers if the shipping paper has more than one page. Page 6. The first page must tell the total number of pages. For example, page 1 of 4. A proper shipping description for each hazardous material. A shipper's certification, signed by the shipper, saying they prepared the shipment according to the regulations. Illustration on page 6, Figure 9.6, shipping paper. 2. ABC Corporation, 88 Valley Street, Anywhere, Virginia. From DEF Corporation, 55 Mountain Street, Nowhere, Colorado. Page 1 of 1. Quantity, 1. HM, RQ. RQ means that this is a reportable quantity. Description, phosgene, 2.3, UN1076, poison, inhalation hazard, Zone A. Phosgene is the proper shipping name from column 2 of the Hazardous Materials table. 2.3 is the hazard class from column 3 of the Hazardous Materials table. UN1076 is the identification number from column 4 of the Hazardous Materials table. Weight, 25 pounds. This is to certify that the above-named materials are properly classified, described, packaged, marked, and labeled, and are in proper condition for transportation according to the applicable regulations for the United States Department of Transportation. Shipper, per, date, DEF Corporation, Smith, October 15, 2003. Carrier, per, date, blank, safety first. Special instructions, 24-hour emergency contact, John Smith, 1-800-555-5555. Continuing with the text. 9.3.5, the item description. If a shipping paper describes both hazardous and non-hazardous products, the hazardous materials will be either described first, highlighted in a contrasting color, identified by an X placed before the shipping name in a column captioned HM. The letters RQ may be used instead of X if a reportable quantity is present in one package. Shipping name, hazard class, and identification number must not be abbreviated unless specifically authorized in the Hazardous Materials Regulations. The description must also show the total quantity and unit of measure, the letters RQ if a reportable quantity. If the letters RQ appear, the name of the hazardous substance. For all materials with the letter G, generic, in column 1, the technical name of the hazardous material. Shipping papers also must list an emergency response telephone number. The emergency response telephone number is the responsibility of the shipper. It can be used by emergency responders to obtain information about any hazardous materials involved in a spill or fire. Some hazardous materials do not need a telephone number. You should check the regulations to determine which do need a telephone number. Shippers must also provide emergency response information to the motor carrier for each hazardous material being shipped. The emergency response information must be able to be used away from the motor vehicle and must provide information on how to safely handle incidents involving the material. It must include information on the shipping name of the hazardous materials, risks to health, fire, explosion, and initial methods of handling spills, fires, and leaks of the materials. Such information can be on the shipping paper or some other document that includes the basic description and technical name of the hazardous material. Or it may be in a guidance book, such as the Emergency Response Guidebook, ERG. Motor carriers may assist shippers by keeping an ERG on each vehicle carrying hazardous materials. The driver must provide the emergency response information to any federal, state, or local authority responding to a hazardous materials incident or investigating one. Total quantity must appear before or after the basic description. The packaging type and the unit of measurement may be abbreviated. For example, 10 CTNS paint, 3 UN 1263, PG Roman numeral 2, 500 lbs. The shipper of hazardous wastes must put the word waste before the proper shipping name of the material on the shipping paper, Hazardous Waste Manifest. For example, waste acetone, 3, UN 1090, PG Roman numeral 2. A non-hazardous material may not be described by using a hazard class or an identification number. 9.3.6 Shipper's Certification. When the shipper packages hazardous materials, he or she certifies that the package has been prepared according to the rules. The signed shipper's certification appears on the original shipping paper. The only exceptions are when a shipper is a private carrier transporting their own product and when the package is provided by the carrier, for example, a cargo tank. Unless a package is clearly unsafe or does not comply with the HMR, you may accept the shipper's certification concerning proper packaging. Page 7. Some carriers have additional rules about transporting hazardous materials. Follow your employer's rules when accepting shipments. 9.3.7 Package Markings and Labels. Shippers print required markings directly on the package, an attached label, or tag. An important package marking is the name of the hazardous materials. It is the same name as the one on the shipping paper. The requirements for marking vary by package size and material being transported. When required, the shipper will put the following on the package: the name and address of shipper or consignee, the hazardous material shipping name and identification number, the labels required. It is a good idea to compare the shipping paper to the markings and labels. Always make sure that the shipper shows the correct basic description on the shipping paper and verifies that the proper labels are shown on the packages. If you are not familiar with the material, ask the shipper to contact your office. If rules require it, the shipper will put RQ, marine pollutant, biohazard, hot, or inhalation hazard on the package. Packages with liquid containers inside will also have package orientation markings with the arrows pointing in the correct upright direction. The labels used always reflect the hazard class of the product. If a package needs more than one label, the labels must be close together, near the proper shipping name. 9.3.8 Recognizing hazardous materials. Learn to recognize shipments of hazardous materials. To find out if the shipment includes hazardous materials, look at the shipping paper. Does it have an entry with a proper shipping name, hazard class, and identification number? A highlighted entry, or one with an X or RQ in the hazardous materials column? Other clues suggesting hazardous materials. What business is the shipper in? Paint dealer? Chemical supply? Scientific supply house? Pest control or agricultural supplier? Explosives, munitions, or fireworks dealer? Are there tanks with diamond labels or placards on the premises? What type of package is being shipped? Cylinders and drums are often used for hazardous material shipments. Is a hazard class label, proper shipping name, or identification number on the package? Are there any handling precautions? 9.3.9 Hazardous Waste Manifest. When transporting hazardous wastes, you must sign by hand and carry a uniform hazardous waste manifest. The name and EPA registration number of the shippers, carriers, and destination must appear on the manifest. Shippers must prepare, date, and sign by hand the manifest. Treat the manifest as a shipping paper when transporting the waste. Only give the waste shipment to another registered carrier or disposal or treatment facility. Each carrier transporting the shipment must sign by hand the manifest. After you deliver the shipment, keep your copy of the manifest. Each copy must have all needed signatures and dates, including those of the person to whom you delivered the waste. 9.3.10 Placarding. Attach the appropriate placards to the vehicle before you drive it. You are only allowed to move an improperly placarded vehicle during an emergency in order to protect life or property. Placards must appear on both sides and both ends of the vehicle. Each placard must be easily seen from the direction it faces, placed so the words or numbers are level and read from left to right, at least 3 inches away from any other markings, kept clear of attachments or devices such as ladders, doors, and tarpaulins, kept clean and undamaged so that the color, format, and message are easily seen. Be affixed to a background of contrasting color. The use of "Drive safely" and other slogans is prohibited. The front placard may be on the front of the tractor or the front of the trailer. To decide which placards to use, you need to know the hazard class of the materials, the amount of hazardous materials shipped, the total weight of all classes of hazardous materials in your vehicle. 9.3.11 Placard Tables. There are 2 placard tables, Table 1 and Table 2. Table 1 materials must be placarded whenever any amount is transported. See Figure 9.7. Figure 9.7 appears on page 8. Continuing with the text. Page 8. Table on page 8, Figure 9.7, placard Table 1, any amount. If your vehicle contains any amount of 1.1 mass explosives, placard as explosives 1.1. If your vehicle contains any amount of 1.2 project hazards, placard as explosives 1.2. If your vehicle contains any amount of 1.3 mass fire hazards, placard as explosives 1.3. If your vehicle contains any amount of 2.3 poisonous or toxic gases, placard as poison gas. If your vehicle contains any amount of 4.3 dangerous when wet, placard as dangerous when wet. If your vehicle contains any amount of 5.2 organic peroxide type B, liquid or solid, temperature controlled, placard as organic peroxide. If your vehicle contains any amount of 6.1 inhalation hazard zone A and B only, placard as poison or toxic inhalation. If your vehicle contains any amount of 7 radioactive yellow Roman numeral 3 label only, placard as radioactive. Continuing with the text. Except for bulk packagings, the hazard classes in Table 2 need placards only if the total amount transported is 1,001 pounds or more, including the package. Add the amounts from all shipping papers for all the Table 2 products you have on board. See Figure 9.8. Table on page 8, Figure 9.8, placard Table 2, 1,001 pounds or more. Category of material, hazard class or division number and additional description as appropriate. 1.4 minor explosion. Placard name explosives 1.4. Category of material 1.5 very insensitive. Placard name explosives 1.5. Category of material 1.6 extremely insensitive. Placard name explosives 1.6. Category of material 2.1 flammable gases. Placard name flammable gas. Category of material 2.2 non-flammable gases. Placard name non-flammable gas. Category of material 3, flammable liquids. Placard name, flammable. Category of material, combustible liquid. Placard name, combustible. Footnote: flammable may be used in place of a combustible on a cargo tank or portable tank. Continuing with the table. Category of material 4.1, flammable solids. Placard name, flammable solid. Category of material 4.2, spontaneously combustible. Placard name, spontaneously combustible. Category of material 5.1, oxidizers. Placard name, oxidizer. Category of material 5.2, other than organic peroxide type B liquid or solid temperature controlled. Placard name, organic peroxide. Category of material 6.1, other than inhalation hazard zone A or B. Placard name, poison. Category of material 6.2, infectious substances. Placard name, none. Category of material 8, corrosives. Placard name, corrosive. Category of material 9, miscellaneous hazardous materials. Placard name, Class 9. Footnote: Class 9 placard is not required for domestic transportation. Continuing with the table. Category of material ORM-D. Placard name, none. Continuing with the text. You may use dangerous placards instead of separate placards for each Table 2 hazard class when you have 1,001 pounds or more of 2 or more Table 2 hazard classes requiring different placards, and you have not loaded 2,205 pounds or more of any Table 2 hazard class material at any one place. You must use the specific placard for this material. The dangerous placard is an option, not a requirement. You can always placard for the materials. If the words inhalation hazard are on the shipping paper or package, you must display poison gas or poison inhalation placards in addition to any other placards needed by the product's hazard class. The 1,000-pound exception does not apply to these materials. Materials with the secondary hazard of dangerous when wet must display the dangerous when wet placard in addition to any other placards needed by the product's hazard class. The 1,000-pound exception to placarding does not apply to these materials. Placards used to identify the primary or subsidiary hazard class of a material must have the hazard class or division number displayed in the lower corner of the placard. Permanently affixed subsidiary hazard placards without the hazard class number may be used as long as they stay within color specifications. Placards may be displayed for hazardous materials even if not required, so long as the placard identifies the hazard of the material being transported. Bulk packaging is a single container with a capacity of 119 gallons or more. A bulk package and a vehicle transporting a bulk package must be placarded, even if it only has the residue of a hazardous material. Certain bulk packages only have to be placarded on the two opposite sides or may display labels. All other bulk packages must be placarded on all four sides. Subsections 9.1, 9.2, and 9.3 test your knowledge. 1. Shippers package in order to fill in the blank the material. 2. Driver placard their vehicle to fill in the blank the risk. Page 9. 3. What 3 things do you need to know to decide which placards, if any, you need? 4. A hazardous materials identification number must appear on the fill in the blank and on the fill in the blank. The identification number must also appear on cargo tanks and other bulk packaging. 5. Where must you keep shipping papers describing hazardous materials? These questions may be on your test. If you can't answer them all, reread subsections 9.1, 9.2 and 9.3. 9.4. Loading and unloading. Do all you can to protect containers of hazardous materials. Don't use any tools which might damage containers or other packaging during loading. Don't use hooks. 9.4.1. General loading requirements. Before loading or unloading, set the parking brake. Make sure the vehicle will not move. Many products become more hazardous when exposed to heat. Load hazardous materials away from heat sources. Watch for signs of leaking or damaged containers. Leaks spell trouble. Do not transport leaking packages. Depending on the material, you, your truck, and others could be in danger. It is illegal to move a vehicle with leaking hazardous materials. Containers of hazardous materials must be braced to prevent movement of the packages during transportation. No smoking. When loading or unloading hazardous materials, keep fire away. Don't let people smoke nearby. Never smoke around Class 1, explosives, Class 2.1, flammable gas, Class 3, flammable liquids, Class 4, flammable solids, Class 5, oxidizers. Secure against movement. Brace containers so they will not fall, slide, or bounce around during transportation. Be very careful when loading containers that have valves or other fittings. All hazardous materials packages must be secured during transportation. After loading, do not open any package during your trip. Never transfer hazardous materials from one package to another while in transit. You may empty a cargo tank, but do not empty any other package while it is on the vehicle. Cargo heater rules. There are special cargo heater rules for loading Class 1, explosives, Class 2.1, flammable gas, Class 3, flammable liquids. The rules usually forbid use of cargo heaters, including automatic cargo heater and air conditioner units. Unless you have read all the related rules, don't load the above products in a cargo space that has a heater. Use closed cargo space. You cannot have overhang or tailgate loads of Class 1, explosives, Class 4, flammable solids, Class 5, oxidizers. You must load these hazardous materials into a closed cargo space unless all packages are fire and water resistant, covered with a fire and water resistant tarp. Precautions for specific hazards. Class 1, explosives materials. Turn your engine off before loading or unloading any explosives. Then check the cargo space. You must disable cargo heaters, disconnect heater power sources, and drain heater fuel tanks. Make sure there are no sharp points that might damage cargo. Look for bolts, screws, nails, broken side panels, and broken floorboards. Use a floor lining with Division 1.1, 1.2, or 1.3. The floors must be tight, and the liner must be either non-metallic material or non-ferrous metal. Use extra care to protect explosives. Never use hooks or other metal tools. Never drop, throw, or roll packages. Protect explosive packages from other cargo that might cause damage. Do not transfer a Division 1.1, 1.2, or 1.3 from one vehicle to another on a public roadway except in an emergency. If safety requires an emergency transfer, set out red warning reflectors, flags, or electric lanterns. You must warn others on the road. Never transport damaged packages of explosives. Do not take a package that shows any dampness or oily stain. Do not transport Division 1.1 or 1.2 explosives in vehicle combinations if there is a marked or placarded cargo tank in the combination, the other vehicle in the combination contains Division 1.1A infiltrating explosives, packages of Class 7 radioactive materials labeled yellow Roman numeral III, Division 2.3, poisonous gas, or Division 6.1, poisonous materials, hazardous materials in a portable tank on a DOT Spec 106A or 110A tank. Page 10. Class 4, flammable solids, and Class 5, oxidizers, materials. Class 4 materials are solids that react, including fire and explosion, to water, heat, and air, or even react spontaneously. Class 4 and 5 materials must be completely enclosed in a vehicle or covered securely. Class 4 and 5 materials, which become unstable and dangerous when wet, must be kept dry while in transit and during loading and unloading. Materials that are subject to spontaneous combustion or heating must be in vehicles with sufficient ventilation. Class 8, corrosive materials. If loading by hand, load breakable containers of corrosive liquid one by one. Keep them right side up. Do not drop or roll the containers. Load them onto an even floor surface. Stack carboys only if the lower tiers can bear the weight of the upper tiers safely. Do not load nitric acid above any other product. Load charged storage batteries so their liquid won't spill. Keep them right side up. Make sure other cargo won't fall against or short-circuit them. Never load corrosive liquids next to or above Division 1.4, explosive C, Division 4.1, flammable solids, Division 4.3, dangerous when wet, Class 5, oxidizers, Division 2.3, Zone B, poisonous gases. Never load corrosive liquids with Division 1.1 or 1.2, explosives A, Division 1.2 or 1.3, explosives B, Division 1.5, blasting agents, Division 2.3, Zone A, poisonous gases, Division 4.2, spontaneously combustible materials, Division 6.1, PG Roman numeral 1, Zone A, poison liquids. Class 2, compressed gases, including cryogenic liquids. If your vehicle doesn't have racks to hold cylinders, the cargo space floor must be flat. The cylinders must be held upright, in racks attached to the vehicle or in boxes that will keep them from rolling over. Cylinders may be loaded in a horizontal position, lying down, if it is designed so the relief valve is in the vapor space.